There's a profound question at the core of every one of us. And we really spend most of our life answering it. And it's really, who am I? It's more of a process of discovery than anything else. We're all so uniquely different, so distinctively other than everyone else. And we are as much a stranger to ourselves as we are to other people. But in the early years, it's very natural to explore who and what you are. I watch it with my granddaughter. She's always moving from one thing to another to another. She's discovered Play-Doh. And she can go to a table with Play-Doh and be there for 2 hours. She discovered puddles recently and loves puddles. And if you can remember back to your infancy or childhood, you were already beginning to say, this is what I'm drawn to, this is what I'm repelled by. What don't I like? And as you start to grow older, you start to make a lot of distinctions. My cousin Wendy and I used to get undressed together, and we're very compelled by the fact that I had a penis and she didn't. And what did that mean? And we were both happy to have what we had. That's all I can say. We didn't really have a desire to have what the other had, but we were very curious about it. But then she started talking about how hard and how painful it was to have a baby. And I started talking about, well, it's really painful to go to war and get shot. And so we were starting to feel there were good and bad, in all of these things that we were, physically, mentally, emotionally. And at some point we started gravitating toward like-minded people, people who reinforce what makes us feel comfortable and avoiding the people that didn't make us comfortable. And I know I discovered early on that I couldn't really throw a ball and that I wasn't really going to ever be an athlete. And there are two sides to that. One is, I know what I am. Two is, what's wrong with me? Why am I not this thing? Why am I not what I should be, or what other people tell me would be good to be? And so there becomes, for many people, a kind of a war inside between what you discover yourself to be, which is often not what you particularly want to be, and what other people tell you should be, you would be better if you could be, too bad you're not. There's so many factors that start to go into the process of creating a self, an I. And by the time we get to adulthood, we tend to be full of compromises about who we are, what we want to do, what we don't want to do. And mostly we exist in a state of confusion and often discomfort. But most of us don't feel, and I'm speaking in generalities here, because if this doesn't apply to you, wonderful. But what most people don't feel is whole. They just don't feel whole. There's always something missing, something not right at any given point in time. Part of it is what you were given in terms of your body, mind, emotional life construct. Part of it is the situation you were born into. Some people get, quote, happy childhood, some people get unhappy childhood. It completely conditions the ride that you're going to be on. Some people find moments of what they think is true fairness in life, and most people find unfairness in life. Why didn't I get this? Why didn't I have that? It's really interesting to me to find people who lock into structure very quickly. My brother understood at the age of 2 that he didn't like coffee. I think he took 1 sip of my father's coffee. He has never touched coffee since. He won't eat coffee ice cream, which I think is a big mistake. But he won't go near anything that has coffee in it. And my mother discovered that she didn't like cheese. And I used to go, how can you not like cheese? It's such a big category. And she said, well, if it's melted or disguised, she can have it like a cheese sauce. But give her a piece of cheese and she wouldn't go near it. And I used to go, it's one of the great joys of life, cheese. And I couldn't ever persuade her, ever, in my entire life, to try a piece of good cheese. So we really lock in, we get hardwired to become a certain kind of person. And then we, if we're lucky, begin to search for, why aren't I whole? Why aren't I happy? Why can't I find this fullness of being? And that leads people to a lot of different choices. You know, therapy, which, by the way, I think is great. I think, a lot of people who do spiritual work think, I don't need therapy. I disagree completely. I think therapy is extraordinary. It's a wonderful way to examine yourself. There are people who go to the realms of non-examination, deaden the realm of experiencing yourself. Food, liquor, there's so many ways, drugs, don't get near the painful part. But I would say it's the painful part that's the most instructive. The stuff you don't want to know about yourself, that probably is the most valuable thing to learn about yourself. But then you have to have courage. And where is the courage gene coming from? If you don't have courage, you don't have courage. How are you going to discover yourself? Well, a lot of us is locked up. A lot of us is restricted. A lot of us is limited by choices we made when we were very young. So when you say no to coffee and cheese, rigidity sets in. A part of you is locked in place, and you will probably never look in that arena. But if you make a choice of going toward something called spiritual work, sensing somehow inside you are not the sum total of your choices, that there is something else going on, that you can find a way toward something that may free you from the limitations and the constrictions that you've placed on yourself. And luckily I ran into Rudy. And Rudy was really big on breaking you down and reconstructing you in whole new ways. And he really based it on the chakras. And the chakras system was this wonderful diagnostic tool that allowed me to see where I was closed and when, and where I was open, and how to begin to deal with these openings and closings of this system inside us that kept us becoming very big, let's say, in our heart, and very small in our mind, or huge in our sexuality, and very small in our capacity to feel love. And all of these imbalances in a way that make us this very imperfect person, but the person we are. And so the opportunity, the option for change is something that came along with meeting Rudy. Because Rudy basically said, you don't have to be what you discovered. You don't have to be the person you think you are. Go deep, go into these spaces, open them up to the possibilities that exist when they're open, and find who you are as a full-flowing, integrated, and complete human being. Which is a real challenge for everybody, because trying to find yourself and change yourself and open to new possibility means you have to try that cheese. You got to sip that coffee. And if you've locked into this idea that I don't do that, it's not who I am, it's not going to happen. Change will not occur. Growth will not occur. And Rudy was very into growing. And so you will remain in some way locked in to a idea of yourself. And now that I have matured in many ways and gotten more to the end of my life than the beginning or the middle, I get to see what all these choices mean. And I get to see, there's a syndrome, and this is the wrong word for it in terms of, I'm not giving you the medical version, but the locked-in syndrome. Locked into yourself, locked into your idea of yourself. To be locked into your idea of yourself is to be in the coffin long before your death occurs. And this locked-in syndrome becomes tighter and tighter and tighter and tighter and more constricting until you really almost literally can't breathe in your life. You live in a state of endless constriction. And the only way out of that is to begin to breathe life into the possibility of opening and change, asking, as Rudy said, for help to surrender. Surrender means let go of the restriction, let go of the constriction, and feel the potential for freedom inside. Feel this thing alive in you, that you can redesign and remake yourself at any point in time. That you can make a different life for yourself if you don't like the life you have, or if you find your heart's not open, you can learn to open and experience love and intimacy, as terrifying as that may be. You can find your navel chakra open, and it will give you the capacity to do in the world, to suddenly function in the world in a way that you never imagined you could function. My son Ari broke his leg when he was very young, how old was Ari? 4 years old, and had this idea of himself as someone who couldn't do physical things. And then he decided somewhere along the way he would not accept that idea of himself, and now he runs marathons all the time. And he runs marathons because he took charge of this thing in himself that said, I can't do, and he opened to the possibility and began what is the only road to change, which is incremental effort. Effort at change. It doesn't happen overnight. Overnight change creates hernias, it creates pulled muscles, it creates all these problems. Incremental change builds muscle, builds strength, builds capacity, and you can begin to design a different life for yourself, a life you might actually want to live. People who express frustration and anger at their life, to me, are people simply who are announcing that they have chosen to give up the possibilities of life. Because at any given moment in your life, at any given moment, you can change it. You just need to take charge. You need to take charge. And the great thing about Rudy's teaching for me was that it enabled me and ennobled me in a way to go forward and say, I can do this. I can do this. And you just do it. You don't even know how you do it. You just go forward and you do new things. You open up. And that is very easy if you're someone who has the gene for opening, let's say. Some of you are really good at opening. Some of you are not really good at opening. I admire you both, but the people who really do it against all instinct, they really open my heart. People who struggle to become more, who don't get it easily, who really have to work at it, boy, does that open my heart. I know as a writer in movies, you root for the person who's got the struggle to become something. The person who gets it easy, it's not an interesting story. It's good, we're happy for them, but it's not really particularly a story you need to hear. We need the stories that open us and inspire us. Becoming a whole human being, becoming yourself, is, in a sense, the goal of life, to the degree that there's a goal. But here's a problem. When you become your whole self, you will realize it's not whole. You will realize there's whole things in you that aren't what you would like, that you're not the person you would love to be, that there are things that you couldn't do, can't do, never will do. I'll never be a baseball player. Not that I really want to, but I never will be that. And what happens is something takes place in your heart chakra that finally starts to accept your limitations. That just says, okay. And it accepts all sorts of limitations, but there's a whole realm of them that it doesn't accept, and that's called regret. Regret is the worst possible thing that can happen to a person, because there's nothing you can do about the thing you regret. Regret is past tense, and it's a present tense anger and frustration and pain that you cannot satisfy, ever. So here's where spiritual work comes in really deeply, because you can actually go into those places that cannot be changed, places of real regret, and accept them. Surrender to them. Say, it's okay. It's okay to be who I am. It's okay to be what I am. It's okay to accept myself as I am. And that's really one of the centerpieces of the heart chakra. It's not loving yourself, although that's a part of it. It's accepting yourself. It's forgiving yourself. It's allowing yourself to be yourself, as incomplete as that may be. Then there's one more step, and it may be a million more, but the one more step. And this is a step that you can't make happen. You can't get there by doing it. It's the step of awakening. But I will tell you, awakening is a kind of calling. It's something that will not be satisfied in you until it happens. Something that wants to know the truth of you beyond the personality-ego construct. Beyond the limitations that you accept, beyond the personality, beyond all of this stuff, there is something bigger and greater. And there are people who have a passion to know that. If you are one of those people, you won't be able to get in the way of it. It will keep happening. You will keep searching, digging, reaching, asking, doing everything possible to attract it, and realize that even that won't work. But you will make that effort. Not everybody wants that. I don't think it's even a requirement in human life to become awakened. You know, it happens to so few people. In the old days, it was really, really a rare event. Nowadays, it seems to be percolating through the system more. But awakening was something that you imagine took many, many, many lifetimes and happened to a small group of bearded old men. But if you do not feel inside a passionate hunger for awakening, it's okay. It's not required. Awakening is something that happens. It just happens. Like when you get a good idea for a story, it's like, wow, you don't know how you got it, it just happened. You know, things happen. Sometimes, you know, you run into someone on the street and it brings you this wonderful moment, or it changes your life. How did that happen? You didn't make it happen. It just happens. Sometimes there's a huge flood that comes into your basement and up 4 feet into your house or more, wipes your house away. Things happen. Things happen. They're big. You don't make them happen. They take place. Awakening is one of those things. What I'm trying to get at, and I think it's really important, is that the teaching that Rudy provided is how to have a remarkably full and fulfilled life. And how valuable that is all by itself. And so I think I have complicated that for a lot of you by talking about awakening all the time as though it is 1, desirable, and 2, attainable. It's not attainable. It occurs. But it will not occur, probably, well, this is not really true. I was going to say, if there isn't some hunger for it. I think there's something in people that is reaching for it, and it's reaching for it kind of all the time. I mean, you guys aren't in my head, but I think about my spiritual life all the time. It's just always there. It's like the teacher thing that you hear talking to you in class every Sunday or whatever Sunday we're together. That's going on in my head all the time. It's just instructive. It's constant, and I love it. It's like, understanding, insight, clarity, and then there are days where it absolutely locks down and I don't get a thing. And when I don't get a thing, I'm miserable. I'm completely miserable because all I want is it. That's all I want is that. And it's culminated in this awakening, which is the thing I've described multiple times here as simply, finally, arriving at what is. Which is all awakening is, guys. It's just awakening to this is it. And I could say that to you and you go, yeah. But it's this is it with a kind of profound awareness of it. A kind of amazing gratitude. And a sense of being touched by source, truth, love. It's so truly worth it. On the other hand, to walk around thinking you're losing or missing something by not having it, it's not true. I mean, it is true, but it's not true. Because you have it. Because the life you're living now is exactly that thing. All that's missing is your awareness of that. That's what awakening is. It's that your life is that. That's all it is. Your life is this extraordinarily, unbelievably remarkable and beautiful, miraculous, mysterious thing. And it's what you are. And if you can just, I don't know what you do to know that, because when it happens, it's actually like, whoa, this was it all the time. All the time. This was the very thing you were looking for. And that's a big realization. But a month later, a year later, this is it. That's what you get. This is it. This has always been it. And so I can look at every one of you and know that you're already there. You're already there. The only thing that hasn't happened is this little thing that goes like that and like that at the same time. And you go, wow. And you don't have to do much for that to happen. I mean, it really could happen right this second. There's no reason that it doesn't happen right this second, except there's a little word in you that everybody seems to have, which is called but. But. And that little thing gets in the way. It just totally gets in the way because you're always denying it. You're always going, well, how could I, this imperfect, not whole person, be awakened to the truth that this is that? You can't, it's impossible to accept that mentally. Except it's not impossible when it occurs. Because then you realize that this person that you are not willing to think is full and whole, is full and whole. It's everything. It's everything. You are that. But if you told me that, and I did hear it when I was in my 20s and 30s, Ramana Maharshi would often talk about you are the thing you're seeking, I would like throw the book away. I go, that's crap. That's total crap. How could that be true? Now, of course, I know that it's true. And something shifted. Something arrived at that place. If you guys have an unbelievable need and hunger for that to happen, I believe it will happen. Period. If you have a sort of need for it to happen, it probably sort of won't happen. Because it really has to do with want. I was talking to Michael before. If your child begins on the 26th of December telling you what he wants the following Christmas, and he tells you every day for 364 days what he wants, why he wants it, sends you emails, cuts out pictures from magazines, sits at the kitchen table and does a whole spiel every night about what he wants. You show me one father or mother who won't deliver that on Christmas. Show me one parent. It won't happen. But if you do it on an occasional basis, Dad, I really would like to get one of these things, but and you go, well, work for it. Good luck. Yeah, wonderful. And you kind of understand they want it. You kind of understand that they would be happy to get it, but you don't feel that you need to go out of your way to get it for them. You just don't. So it's kind of in each of our conditioning, what we reach for, what we ask for, what we want, and what's delivered. And it's kind of really up to you to make your life the life you want it to be. And nobody else can make it that. Nobody. So it begins by figuring out who you are, seeing the limitations, either accepting them or not. If you're of a certain makeup, you won't accept them. You'll keep changing, you'll keep growing, and you'll keep expanding and expanding. And then if you really have an unbelievable drive to know the truth, it will come. And the truth is very simple. I've given it to you week after week. This is it. What do you do with that? You don't do anything with it. You just go, wow. And it's what you've been looking for. It's all you've been looking for. Trust me. It's not out there. It's not learning how to meditate, how to levitate. It's not learning how to, be in 3 places at the same time. It's not learning how to be a healer. It's not learning how to have powers. It's nothing like that. It's nothing like that. Except you do end up with kinds of powers, but they're the powers of connection. The power to love another human being, and watch what that does. You can literally touch somebody on a sore spot and make it better. I kiss my granddaughter's boo-boos all the time, and they get better instantly. Instantly. She has total trust and belief that I can do that, and so I do it. And we can all do that for each other. That's what we do. That's what we're here for. And we're really a collective, and this is a really important idea. We're here for each other. You have no idea how important we are for each other. You don't do it alone. That's why you ask for help. Who do you ask for help? You can say God, yes. You can ask for help from God. But we've got these manifestations of God all around us. Why not just ask directly? Say, please help me, hold my hand, be with me. Whatever it is you need, why not ask? And if it's not delivered, at least delivered in the way you want it, then get out there and do the work, whatever that work may be, and don't have excuses. Don't have excuses. Don't have but. I can't. If this and if that happened. You watch people who live a life like that, the life of but, and nothing happens. Their lives absolutely don't go in any direction. It's really sad, and I see so many people capitulating to the life they don't want. And they have blames and angers, and they can go back into their childhood, and they can go to their parents, and they can have this long list of people that made it wrong for them. But, if I'm St. Peter up at the gates, and they come to the gate and say why they should be allowed in, and you say, well, you never did the work. Well, they said, well, I had a terrible parent, I had this, and I had that, and they'll go down the list, and St. Peter said, well, I'm so sorry, bye. You don't let those guys in. The guys who come in are the guys we celebrate, the guys who work against adversity, who find life to be really, as Rudy said, brutal, because it is, and they find a path. They find a way. Rudy used to always talk about the acorn and the oak tree. How does it get out of that shell? How does it dig through that dark soil? How does it get past the rocks? How does it do that? This tiny little tendril has more strength in it than most of us. And it breaks through into the light, and then, most human beings would go, oh, I arrived. I'm done. I just broke through into the light. But that's just the beginning. There's that huge, huge tree that has to be created. Each one of us, that's what we're doing. And are we doing it on our own and by ourselves? No. Every part of the universe is working. The rain comes, the earth gets fertile, we grow, we create leaves, they fall off, they create new nourishment for us, we grow bigger, we get stronger, fire comes and burns half of us down, we grow further. That's an oak tree. That's what we do as people. That's how you do it. Unless you're a person who chooses to go, oh, I can't do that. That's too hard. you know? And so you turn on the TV, and you watch TV for the rest of your life. It's a choice. Is it the wrong choice? Not necessarily. But it may be if you don't feel good about it, if you regret it. So, here we are in the dilemma of who am I? And the question is, who do you think you are? You have to provide the answer. It's really up to you. And that answer will be very directive. And you may discover that that answer isn't finite. It's infinite. It goes on and on and on. And the who am I changes by the minute. And it's endlessly fulfilling. So, are there any questions?
Yeah, I chose what I do as a profession because I really wanted to learn compassion and patience with people. And I heard in this movie one time, I think it was Blue Eyes, what's his name? Whatever his name was, Newman said, in my religion it says, act as if you have faith and faith will be given to you. So this hit me like a ton of bricks. I said, yeah, well, why don't I act as if I'm compassionate? And sure enough, it worked with it. And it hit me just yesterday. I feel so dead, after 60 years of this. But it said, well, act as if I'm enlightened. And then enlightenment will happen. So I'm starting to decide, well, maybe I'll just pretend like I'm enlightened, and then eventually I'll become that way.
No,
does that sound?
Yeah, no, I think much of what I'm describing, becoming a whole human being, is what enlightenment looks like. It's the same thing. The only difference, again, is that little click that doesn't have to, but can go off. First of all, I think if you're working your whole life that way, as you start to leave this world, within days or seconds of that departure, the enlightenment will happen. Is it important to happen earlier? No, it just gives you a different way to live your life. But it will happen, because that's what happens. Ultimately, everybody awakens. Ultimately, that's how it works. It's just, how fast can you get past but?
How do you know the difference between your limitations and really old behaviors that are super stuck? And then also, how do you know what you want?
I mean, those are good questions. You don't always know. I haven't announced this at all in the past, but I've been seeing a Jungian therapist for about 4 years, 5 years. It's been the most remarkable thing for me because, I decided at one point there's stuff I'm not understanding that's locked up inside me. So I literally opened the phone book and said, Jungian therapist Reinbeck. And there was one Jungian therapist. And I went to see this woman who has been the most extraordinary gift to me because she gets this process that we all go through. She gets it. And I'm able to dialogue about it in a way that I've never been able to talk to anybody. And so she helps me get rid of a lot of the stuck stuff that I just found spiritual work didn't allow me to do. And I used to think, if you do spiritual work, it will take care of everything. Well, spiritual work led me to find this person who's helping me. And she's really, really wonderful. And then Blanche and I went to therapist, a marriage counselor they're called, but she's a therapist, because we couldn't figure out where to live. And we were getting really tense about it. Which house? Which one do we keep? Which do we sell? It got really problematic, and we needed another person to come in. We asked for help, and we found help. And this woman is another one of the most extraordinary people. They're just like these gifts. It's just an approach to digging into the density of old stuff that you can't get to on your own. You just can't. Maybe some people can. I couldn't. Blanche couldn't. And it just helps till it loosens up the soil so that you can grow more. That's what I've discovered. And my spiritual life has grown from that, and I know yours has grown. And I know you've been digging into a lot of this. I don't know if you've had therapeutic help, but several. It's valuable.
Yeah.
I think it's valuable.
Yeah.
And then you explore the stuff and you see, well, you've had a particular kind of childhood, and it's created a lot of specificity in your life. And you are now a person who has to live through that particular thing. It serves you. I know you. I mean, Rudy says you never attract what you don't need. He says you always get a little bit more than you can handle, but not what you don't need. You always get that thing, and that's what you use to grow. You've had miraculous growth and transformation in your life, and it comes from a lot of the difficulty and pain that was there. I don't know anybody who's spiritually seeking who isn't coming out of pain somewhere. We've all had some kind of pain, or we've recognized that life doesn't give us what we need. And that's where spiritual work starts to really emerge. But trying to be discriminating to know where it comes from, in the end is kind of futile, because knowing the where it comes from isn't as valuable as knowing that it is, and then what to do with it. And mostly what to do with it is to acknowledge it, to accept it as deeply as you can, and to where you can do it, let it go as an influence in your life, especially if it's a negative influence that's pulling you down. Just let it go, or just look at it every time it comes up and just go, I get why you're there, I know what you are, I acknowledge your being, but I don't need to live under the yoke of that particular kind of thought process. And you get that ability. Rudy said spiritual work gives you choice. That's exactly what it gives you. You can choose not to engage something. And if you can't get past it at all, this woman that at the retreat last month had this concept, which I've described it, and I think it's beautiful. Lean into it. Lean into the pain. Lean into the suffering. You don't have to press up hard. Just lean into it, and it will explain itself to you. It will begin to reveal itself to you in ways that will ultimately liberate you. Nothing is here to kill you. I mean, yes, something will kill you in the end, but it's all there to bring you into a state of consciousness, awareness, and liberation. Everything. That's what it's here for. Shiva, the dark force of Shiva, the destroyer, what's it destroying? It's destroying everything that is illusory, everything that is not productive, everything that is weak in you. It destroys all that stuff, ultimately even takes your ego away completely and kills you. It ends your life. But it can never end your true life because you're infinite and eternal. So it releases you to that. Is that getting at all close to your answer? You can go further with it.
I'm not sure.
Well, we can talk privately. Okay. Chris, did you have a question? Did you talk?
I did. In the last few years, and really the last 2 weeks, I've had a lot of loss. And some things and people that I had have left or been taken from me, or I've given up. And so my question was, how do I use each loss or the process of loss in my spiritual work?
Good question. And the answer, honestly, is in your face today. Because you're doing it. There's a whole new clarity in you that I saw when I saw you for the first moment today, and I knew you've been through a really terrible 2 weeks. That Hurricane Sandy did a lot of damage to a lot of people, and I know you were among the worst affected of everybody that I know. But I look at you and I go, wow, what's going on here? And I call it touching reality. And the reality that is hardest to ignore and avoid, because we're very good at ignoring and avoiding reality, the hardest is cataclysmic loss. You can't get away from it. It's just there. It's over. And learning to feel what that is, yes, it feels negative, and yes, it feels painful, but it also is reality. And when you are touching reality, it's transformative. Living in reality is transformative. It's what makes you become who you are. I've learned that late in life. For me, that's not equivalent perhaps, but the tragedy of losing the musical for me, untimely, unjustly, was so real and painful. And yet, every time I touched it, I felt stronger. I felt I'm in truth. I'm living in truth. I'm living in reality. Living in reality is where you want to live. Most of us do a dance in this little room where we never touch reality going on around us. We're always able to insulate ourselves. Again, turn on the TV, have a shot of this, do whatever you're going to do. Keeps you away from the truth. Getting to the truth makes you a real entity. Reality is the greatest teacher. It is an ongoing teacher, all day, all night, complete teacher, if you can be strong enough to be with it and not dance away from it and find a way to pretend it doesn't exist. It's very hard to dance away from loss because it's there all the time. Loss is always there. And you can deaden it, but if you can live with it, it does what it's doing to you right now. And I wish I could show you a mirror of your face, but the openness, the glow, the radiance that's coming from you today is extraordinary, and it's coming because I can sense you are living with reality and truth.
Maybe it's the Joseph Campbell, the monomyth. Every society has a story of a flood, and a flood is a new beginning. And I was thinking about, I was writing to just friends, touching base, are you okay, what's happening? And I wrote it, and then I thought about it, that every great society, every great revolution society starts with a flood. And maybe it's this true flood of having 4 feet of water in your house. Or maybe it's a flood of ideas, or maybe it's a flood of pain. And for a lot of people, I think it's sort of a flood of pain, or it's what William Burroughs called the naked lunch, when you really had to face what's at the end of the spoon, and you have no choices left but
Well, I think that's very smart. And I think that, yes, this flood does seem to have had an impact. It may have affected an election. It may have affected an awareness of global warming, which could have a huge sort of valuable impact in our world and our planet. You know, it did a lot, but it also caused a lot of pain and suffering. But like I'm saying, pain and suffering in reality are one of the ways we most become ourselves. We grow. And again, there you go, Chris. Look at that face. Is that a face of suffering? That is a man who has learned great lessons. Great lessons.
Thank you, Bruce.
Sure. Anybody else?
I was asking.
Is that it? Okay, well, I know we've talked forever here. You know, Blanche and I are leaving for the winter, and as you know, uncertainty follows that, because we have no idea what's coming in terms of future here. But part of real truth in life is nobody knows what's coming, and uncertainty is the only truth. So I can tell you that I love you guys beyond description, and I hope I'm back here to be with you whenever that's possible. And you know, if it's not possible, well, we'll never really be apart on some fundamental level. You've got endless videos that basically keep saying the same thing over and over again, so you can watch them until you're just bored to death, and then you just go, let me just awaken to get out of this. You know? But anyway, we're in LA for the time being. You're always welcome if you find yourselves in LA. We have room. We take people out to lunch and dinner, and there's classes, and we're happy to entertain you. And if not, we'll be back here somewhere along the way. And certainly by spring is the plan, unless the house is sold, but it's not very likely. So, you know, we'll be around, and you know, feel free to call, feel free to write, and you know, just know that it's a two-way street, and that, you know, Blanche and I really, really love you. We love this class. We love the gathering. We love what is being provided here. The energy in this room is such a gift. You know, I mean, it's hard to come by in the world, and here we are. So thank you for coming today, and I hope when we come back, you'll still be here.